So again, welcome everybody. Thank you for your patience. I'm sorry we're starting behind. Um, for the last part, we talked about the vaccines and the differences between them. If you're looking for more information on them and where I get my information from, you can take a look at michigan.gov. And actually, this update information should be more of December 18th and not 11th. So it'll be as of today. CDC.gov, the National Institute of Health.gov, Johns Hopkins Tracker, the pharmaceutical companies themselves, the various news outlets that have consistent or verifiable information, meaning that it's pretty consistent across the board, and that it can be verified based on the government sites or other things that I'm comparing it to. These discussions are being downloaded to the onto YouTube. So if you are interested in looking at previous ones, please take a look into YouTube. We'll be listed as JBC MDVIPPC. Now, we had a difficult time on the last one because it was left on record for a long period of time. And when it was left on for a long period of time, they it was having a hard time downloading. So Bernadette had to go make some adjustments to it. So hopefully it will be there, or it should be there soon. But if you want to look at the previous ones, I would encourage you to do so because it's really good information about COVID and the vaccines and other items. Um, and again, this whole idea of doing this is to improve our understanding of COVID and how we can do to protect ourselves and each other. So as we start, one of the things that we wanted to talk about is, do we have a pandemic or is this a hoax? I also want to talk about the current state of affairs on how things have changed a little bit, the update on the 3 leading COVID vaccines, because a number of you have probably heard that there were some side effects that popped up, and I want to talk about the side effects so people feel comfortable about the vaccine and what could happen, our COVID rankings, and just COVID general information. And what I mean by that, it's just kind of hodgepodge of things to know, um, because I refer everybody back to our previous, and I don't want to really rehash things. I left the isolation versus quarantine because it seems there's still a number of people who don't really understand the difference of that and the importance of isolation and quarantine. And then I had a meeting with the home monitoring company, and so I wanted to explain more about that because it's just an amazing device and the things that can be done. I also want to talk to people about the Michigan COVID app. Apparently, in the first month that it's been out, there has been more than 1 million people that have signed up on it. So, provided people are doing the right thing, I think it's going to work really well. And then leave questions for the end. So I wanted to explain things about pandemic because there's a lot of people who are saying that this isn't a pandemic. And I think it's because people don't really understand what the definition of pandemic is. So a pandemic is an epidemic occurring on a scale that crosses international boundaries, usually affecting people on a worldwide scale. It's a disease or condition, is not a pandemic because it is widespread or kills many people, but it must also be infectious. For example, cancer is responsible for a lot of deaths and crosses boundaries, but is not considered a pandemic because the disease is neither infectious nor contagious. So when you look at this disease, which remember, the organism is SARS-CoV-2 that causes a disease, which is the COVID-19 disease, and sort of like HIV, the HIV virus can cause AIDS. So this is a condition where it's an infection, which we know it's an infection. It has been identified as a coronavirus type, and we know that in the people who are dying or being infected, that this virus is in them and causing issues. It is crossing into almost every country in the world, and it is causing disease anywhere from light disease to the worst, which would be death. So it in every respect, this fills the definition of a pandemic. So anyone saying that this is not a pandemic is completely wrong. And it's almost like someone saying that 1 plus 1 is not 2, it's 3. It is 2, and this pandemic is a pandemic. As far as a hoax, I would venture to guess that, and I'm not going to guess, I'm going to say that those affected by somebody who's had COVID and had a loss is going to completely say to you that this is not a hoax. I mean, I just was at a funeral this week of somebody who was just going for a cardiac procedure and unfortunately ended up getting COVID infection and a few days later died from their COVID infection. This is not a hoax. This is something really real. And if people don't take it seriously, they're going to get hurt or they're going to pass it on to someone who's going to get hurt. So I guess I'm saying this because treating people and caring for people who have this condition and the amount of work that's being done in the background to try to take care of these people is enormous. I know my staff has been vigilant about things, working after hours, doing things in the middle of the night, doing things uh, at all weird times just to get people tested and cared for and checked on. And we have a list of people that we have who have COVID that we check on a daily basis or every other day basis just to see how they're doing with their oxygen levels, their symptoms. And unfortunately, some of them have declined to a point they need to be hospitalized. And all of you know that I just lost somebody 2 weeks ago to this disease, and it was rapid on her. And unfortunately, she becomes a statistic on someone who had been in a facility. So my heart goes out to those individuals who've had someone affected by this in a very negative way. So our current state, now we have close to 3,700 deaths a day, and this was as of yesterday, and that translates to about 2 deaths a minute. And so this is unacceptable because, again, we talked about last time, if we were to extrapolate this out and we wanted to get herd immunity without vaccination, and at this rate of death, we would be well over 1 million people who would die by the time that we get enough people infected without the vaccine and just going through this naturally. And this would just be in our country. This is not talking about the world. This is just our country of the people that we would have lost. And again, the projection now it's going to be greater than 400,000 that's thought to be to die by the inauguration, which is greater than the number of people who have lost in the military in World War II. And just to contrast that, cardiovascular death occurs every 36 seconds, so that's about 2,400 people a day that are lost, and people are being lost by COVID. The other part that I'm bringing up these numbers is because when you look at all death causes, and I'm just going to bring this up again because people don't really understand that there is data that looks at people our death rates during the same types of the times of the year that's been going on for years. So in let's just say in 1950 or 1970 or in 1965 or in 2005, there is a curve that ends up happening of the natural trends that are happening in all cause deaths. And there are times when there are spikes of something that's happening into us globally that result in a spike where the projected number of people who would die, it's over that point. And there was a time, and I think you guys, some of you have heard before, I was taking care of people in the hospital, and I was telling people that I was at that time afraid because that was also a time when the flu vaccine that was picked was not the right flu vaccine. And actually, many people were falling ill to flu, and the hospital was completely full, over capacity. People were in the hallways. I mean, it was really not a safe thing. And for me to be there every day and avoid getting infected from these people because the flu shot was wrong.
Hi, this is Pam.
During that time, there was a tremendous spike in deaths that happened in
Good,
comparison
how are
to
you?
years. So
About that,
vaccines
yeah.
do work because at that if that vaccine was right, then we wouldn't have the spikes that were going on. So the 40% of the U.S. COVID deaths are related to someone who's in a nursing home. And I'm emphasizing this is because the vaccine is
Okay.
targeted for
Mhm.
those people who are
Uh-huh.
residents or workers in nursing homes, because 2 out of 5 people who are dying are related to one of these facilities. And usually it's community spread. And before that, nursing homes, there was poor infection control. And you could read on, we talked about this before. You could see the death rate is higher in nursing homes or assisted living facilities, extended care facilities, higher than what's nationwide at 5%. Locally, as of today, the hospital cases and state cases are declining. And many of you have heard that our governor had spoke and had also reiterated that the mandate to wear masks and close some areas have helped because our cases are overall down. So I suspect that things will be opening up soon. The inpatient rehab beds at Beaumont Troy that were closed to accommodate other patients to treat COVID and other medical and surgical conditions are planning on opening up soon. Uh, Unfortunately, we had to ship our patients out to other inpatient rehab places like Royal Oak, and then there were other inpatient rehab places around in the city that were closed because of the same issues of COVID infections. So, what's new with the COVID vaccines? So, again, the three leading ones are Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca. So Pfizer was approved on December 12th, and it has already been administered in people. We'll talk about that more on an individual basis. Moderna, the FDA independent committee, which is a committee of over 20 people, and they're looking at uh, the data and seeing if it should be recommended. And this is by different disciplines that are in there. They're considered the best experts in the country to look at this. They met yesterday and they recommended to the FDA that they should allow the Moderna vaccine to be used. So I haven't seen the news today, but I suspect that sometime today that there's going to be some announcement. The AstraZeneca is still in study, but they're looking at that probably, hopefully, will be out before month's end that we'll be able to start administering this. So again, the vaccine goals are to prevent hospitalization and to prevent infection. And preventing infection really means, well, let's start with the preventing hospitalization. If you get infected, these vaccines, our hopes are is that they will decrease the severity of the disease so you don't need to be hospitalized or you don't get bad that you could actually lose your life or be impaired. And that's what these vaccines are already seeing, that all three of them are actually showing that it prevents severity of disease when you get the infection and also decreases the chance of hospitalization. The next goal that's needed is that it needs to prevent infection, which means that it needs to prevent the propagation of the infection from one individual to another individual. And in the AstraZeneca vaccine, they have shown that it does prevent the infection spread to other people. Now, the Pfizer and Moderna has not done that yet because their studies were done differently. They did not do testing on individuals afterwards or during the study to find out if they have the virus in their system. So they can't tell if it was spread to other people. Not like in the AstraZeneca study where they were testing people so they could see if the other people around ended up getting the infection. But the thought is because it's so effective at 90-95%, that there is a very good chance that it is going to likely stop the propagation of the infection to another individual. Just remember, they're not 100%. So that means that just because you're going to have the vaccine does not mean it gives you this green light to say, I can let my guard down. So you should still wearing masks. You should be still sanitizing. You should be trying to keep your social distance. You should be limiting contact with other people, especially when we need to get as many people vaccinated as possible, and also be respectful for the people who decide not to have the vaccine. Everyone should understand this is a decision, and this decision is based on their comfort their knowledge about things, and we need to be respectful and mindful for those individuals who are going to take the vaccine and also those individuals who are not going to take the vaccine. The reality, again, we talked about this, is that we need 4 to 5 vaccines to get the 60-70% community immunity or herd immunity through vaccines. There's a difference about getting herd immunity, which means getting as many people exposed to the virus without causing disease or disaster, versus having herd immunity without a vaccine and just letting the natural infection go through. But that unfortunately has a lot of deaths that are associated with it. So these vaccines, we need so many of them because these three cannot keep up with the production to make enough vaccine to cover the world. Remember, just in our country, we have over 330 million people. And if all 330 million people want to get vaccinated, these three would not be able to keep up with that, especially when they have orders from other countries in the world. So the first one, Pfizer, was approved for U.S. use on December 12th. It was first administered in the United States on December 14th, and Beaumont Royal Oak started immunization December 15th. So frontline healthcare workers are going to get it first, and there's a priority also in the Beaumont system. Those are going to be directly affected who are on the COVID units in the emergency room, the specialists who are working with people in those places where they're direct contact. Me, I don't mind being a little later because I'm not exposed to people directly with COVID. It is an mRNA vaccine, and people are worried that because it's working on some part of our genetic profile, that it's going to affect our DNA and cause us to do something differently that we shouldn't. It doesn't do anything directly to the DNA. It takes your existing DNA and it maps out for it to make a copy of that mRNA that is introduced to you, that is a copy of the proteins on the surface of the virus. So it does not alter your DNA at all. It just gives a blueprint, says this is what the surface of the protein looks like. Make a copy of it in the body so the body could recognize it. So now it recreates a wanted poster in your body so that in the event that virus comes in that has that coding on it, it will recognize it and says, I see you, I'm going to attach these cells to you, and it's going to be a beacon that all your killer cells in your body will go to attack it, so it doesn't have a chance to infect other areas or to multiply. So it's different because it's kind of making your body recognize it well before it comes into your system, as opposed to introducing a live virus, even if it's weakened, that now this live virus weakened is in your body, that your body has to now kind of recognize and try to develop the cells, but it's been roaming around. You already know all the other stuff. The part that's important here is that it significantly decreases the severity of infection in those who are infected. So that means that if you have the vaccine and you got infected with the COVID virus, that you should not have a severe case of COVID. And actually, that's what they found. In every case that the person did get infected, they had very minimal symptoms of COVID to no symptoms of COVID. They're finding that instead of 5 doses in a vial, that there might be additional, that they can get an extra dose. So this is important because then we can vaccinate a little bit more people than what the doses that were given. And they're finding that the way they're doing that is that it all depends on the needle. I mean, the bigger bore needle that carries a little bit more of the vaccine in it, that ends up becoming waste potentially, that if they use a smaller needle to draw up the material, then they could end up having less that's stuck in the needle. In a larger bore needle, if they're using a smaller needle, I should say, and that they would not be wasting part of the dose, so they can actually save some. There are cases that you're now hearing of some allergic reactions and cases of Bell's palsy. Um, and I want to talk about those two side effects because they might be side effects enough to scare somebody, but I wanted to reassure people that it should be okay. So the anaphylaxis that can happen, anaphylaxis is a severe allergic reaction that it can occur. It's a hypersensitivity reaction to any type of material. It could be bee sting, it could be penicillin, it could be other medicines, it could be peanuts that people end up having a bad reaction to. And so the same thing can happen to anything that's introduced to your body, whether it's the flu shot or other a chemotherapy drug or anything. So when people have anaphylaxis, they have an overreaction to the material that now can cause respiratory symptoms, they become short of breath, and in really severe cases, they could drop their blood pressure, they could pass out. They generally will have a bad skin rash, swelling, they could have abdominal cramping, nausea, and treatment generally is usually you could either watch it if it's not so bad, but in most cases when it's that bad, we have to intervene, which we use antihistamines or allergy type medicines. We'll inject them with steroids, and then in really bad cases, we'll give them epinephrine. But it's manageable. And people have had these reactions with penicillin and peanuts and bee stings. And they're finding out that even though people have allergic reactions like this, that it's not generally as severe as when people are exposed to other material like that. It's just that it's important to identify and note because if you're having that and they're observing you, which every person who gets the injection does not go away right away. They get the injection, they sit there for a little bit so they can monitor just to make sure they don't have a reaction to the medicine. And if they do, generally you're going to be in a place that you're going to be able to get an intervention so that you can get this reversed. So I just want to reassure everybody, yes, it's something to be worried about, but not to the point that you should be concerned not to get the injection. So there is some thought that if you've had bad allergic reactions to things, that maybe you should hold off on doing it. I think that's reasonable. I think that if you do have bad reactions to medications in the past, then maybe considering having it done in a place that's equipped or adept to taking care of people, that if you do have a reaction, that something can be done to intervene quickly on that. And then the other one is Bell's palsy. Bell's palsy is a condition where you can get weakening of one side of the face. It affects one of a nerve, and that causes now the muscles of that side of the face to get weak. Sometimes people can have a difference in taste because that same nerve is responsible for taste and sensation to the tongue. You might be sensitive to sound, and you might have ear pain on that side. There are many things that can cause this. It could be a cancer, it could be a medication, it could be related to an infection, it could be done to a rheumatological condition. But in most cases, we feel that it's probably related to a viral infection. And usually the viral infection is either HSV, which is herpes simplex virus, and there's actually two of them. There's herpes simplex virus 1 and 2, and one is generally not sexually transmitted, and two is usually sexually transmitted. And then varicella zoster, so people with the shingles, or and people with Epstein-Barr virus, which is the one that causes mono. So those are thought to cause that. Now, as I said, there's multiple conditions that can cause this, so it's not just this vaccine that can do that. In general, 15 to 20 cases per 100,000 people can get Bell's palsy. And in the analysis they're doing on the vaccine, it's calculating out to about 11 cases per 100,000. So it's less than in general about having Bell's palsy. And they found that Bell's palsy cases happen in both the Moderna and also the Pfizer vaccine. Lifetime risk in having Bell's palsy is 1 in 60 people. And the treatments generally, most people don't need treatment because 70% of it will resolve on its own. You might have weakness of your face that will happen for a few days, maybe a few weeks, and then it will get better on its own. If it's really bad, we'll give steroids or antiviral medications, and there are other treatments that can be done. But in general, Bell's palsy, it's just difficult because it's cosmetic. I mean, if you see this gentleman here, you could see that his side of his face here is weakened, and you can loss of this muscle here and the droop of the eyebrow in the corner of the mouth, and so it's visible, and but it will get better over time. So I guess I'm putting this to let you know that these are two side effects that could be potential of the vaccine, but there are things that are reversible or they can be treated. And when you weigh the risk of the benefits, well, if you don't have the COVID vaccine, then there's a chance of potential death. You know, the Bell's palsy and anaphylaxis. Uh, the anaphylaxis more likely a chance of potential death if you have a really severe allergic reaction and it's not caught in time. But remember, in the ones that they've been seeing, the the episodes aren't as severe that that would end up happening. It could happen, but generally it's not as bad, so it can be turned around. So when you look at this map is looking at the first doses that were allocated in the United States. So there are 2.9 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine that was placed. Remember, it's the amount of vaccine that each state's going to get is going to be based on their population in comparison to the whole United States. So in Michigan, you can see here there were 84,825 of initial doses that were sent to Michigan. Now, there's been a lot of controversy because some people have been saying they've been getting less, or some are saying that in the next week or so that their projected amount is going to be less than what they were told. Now, Pfizer is saying that they don't have a reduction problem and they don't believe that that's really happening. So I don't know yet what's going to end up happening. I guess we'll see what the numbers show next week in terms of what states are getting for their doses and how they're distributing it out and how many million doses are going to be coming out. But in Michigan, we had 84,825 come to us already. You can't see it? All right. So let me see. So I'm hoping that people can see this map here. If not, it's going to be on my slides, and it just shows every state and showing the number of doses. Like California ended up getting 327,600 doses. You know, again, in Michigan, 84,825. New York got 169,650. Idaho got 13,600 doses. But you can take a look at this just in case you're interested. When you look at Moderna, so Moderna, again, the FDA independent committee recommends FDA to approve the use of this. So we're on the eve of approval. So again, I didn't see news today to see if it was approved or not, but I suspect it's going to get approved really quickly by the FDA. And the reason why is that I'm trying to remember. So when they voted on the Pfizer, 17 approved, and I think 4 ended up saying no, and then 1 did not make a vote either way. And the 4 who voted against it was only because they couldn't figure out whether 16 and 17-year-olds should be vaccinated. And in this one, for the Moderna, the committee voted 20, 0, and 1. So 20 people who voted for approval, 0 against, and 1 who was undecided or did not vote. So this one ended up much more robust in its approval. It's an mRNA vaccine also. They're planning on having 6 million doses initially, with 20 million before the end of the month. And just remember, our portion that we'll get for Michigan is going to be about 3%. So at 6 million, we'll probably get about maybe 86,000, 87,000 doses. and then multiply that by 3 by the end of the month. So we'll probably have enough for 250,000 doses. But remember, it's 2 doses, so you have to cut that in half. So that will be half that many people that will be vaccinated. Again, it's 2 doses. Its benefit is that it just needs regular refrigeration versus Pfizer is super cooled down to negative 94. And the reason why it has to go to negative 94 is just for its shelf life. So at 25 degrees, which is below freezing, it will last for about 5 days. But if it goes to not less than 94 degrees, then it can actually be saved for 6 months. I can't imagine any of it sitting around for that length of time because everybody's looking to get the vaccination. What's interesting is that when they looked at more at the data for Moderna, they found out that in asymptomatic infection, it decreases asymptomatic infection 63% with just the first dose. So remember that when we're giving this as 2 doses, because the first one's sort of like revving up, and then the second is a booster to really get it to work well. And it seems to work very well that way. It's 94.5% effective, and there were no significant safety concerns so far, but it did show that there were some cases of Bell's palsy with that too. But I think they saw about maybe 4 cases in their study that had Bell's palsy. And you're talking about 4 cases out of several tens of thousands of people who were tested. And then AstraZeneca, we talked about this before. Nothing's really changed with that because they're still trying to get approval for release early under the thought that at half the dose and the second dose is a full dose at the higher efficacy at 90% versus 62% with 2 full doses, that if they can get this, then they'll have the vaccine out. But there's possible availability in January, but they're really trying to push it for the end of this month. So interesting, on Beaumont's website, they have here that about myth and fact. So the first one, COVID-19 vaccine was rushed, and so it's probably not safe. But the fact is, the FDA has rigorous scientific and regulatory processes to facilitate the development and ensure the safety, effectiveness, and quality of vaccines. And the answer is that's true. I mean, these groups were meeting on a frequent basis instead of on a lengthy basis so that they can review the data and try to figure out whether this is the right thing or not. So the process of taking a look at it and say, okay, let's look at the data here, and then the group can't convene for another 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 10 weeks or 5 months. That wasn't happening because they were getting the groups together quickly and staying together so they could review this as quickly as possible. And on top of that, the data was coming in faster than what normally happened. I, I think many of you have heard me, and I said this in a previous lecture. If I had a measles vaccine and I told you that I needed 30,000 people, I mean, how long do you think it would take me to get 30,000 people to volunteer for my vaccine? It would take forever. And that would mean that to review all that data, it would take forever to review that data because you couldn't finish until you had all those people that were looked at for the requirement of the number of people that need to be tested and reviewed. So the next one is delays or pauses in the process meant the COVID-19 vaccine trials weren't going well. Well, no, it's actually the opposite. It meant all the protocols were in place that said, if you find that there is a problem, stop everything and let's review everything to try to figure out what's going on so we can know whether it's safe or not. If it's not safe, it doesn't move forward anymore. And then those people who are vaccinated have to be watched really close to see what's going on. So the right thing happened is that those pauses and delays didn't mean it was bad, it just meant something was seen, and you got to figure out whether it was related to the vaccine group or the non-vaccine group. Next one, if you get the vaccine, they will inject the COVID-19 virus into your body. No, this is not a live virus. This is something that, if it's an mRNA virus, it encodes the proteins that are on the surface of the virus that now is introduced to your body. It was never alive, and it's not going to come alive in your body. And the new vaccine or the ones that are a live virus, they're actually weakened, or they're parts of a live virus that's given to a person. So it's it's not true. So that hopefully will help people understand that those thoughts are not right. The next one, it's not safe to be vaccinated before my family can. So this says that the COVID-19 vaccine does not use any form of the virus, so either in dead or weakened state. So there are some vaccines that are live viruses that we give to people, and so it can be a danger for other people that are there that have a weakened immune system, like they're on chemotherapy or they have HIV, or there's some kind of other medical condition they have that's weakened their immune system, that they could get potentially infected um, by the person getting a vaccine. But none of these vaccines are this way for COVID. The next one, I don't need to get 2 doses of the vaccine. So you do, because the first dose of the vaccine primes your immune system to react to it and create memory. And the second dose helps the body develop the long-term memory cells that protects you from the virus. So you do, in this case, you do need the vaccines to be done. Oops. The next one, if I get vaccinated for the COVID-19, I'll be more vulnerable to other illnesses. So the vaccine will work to teach your immune system to recognize and protect against coronavirus. It is not proven to make you vulnerable to other illnesses. So you should not be getting other infections just because you received the vaccine. This is very specific for one um, virus that's trying to create havoc in your system. The next one is, because the vaccines are available, the pandemic is over. Right? You guys heard that from the start. I'm saying no. There has to be a lot of people that are vaccinated or get the infection enough to get enough for the herd immunity, so that we could really cut down the chance of this pandemic. So you need to still do all the standard things. And then the last one, the vaccine changes your DNA. Again, it doesn't affect your DNA. It helps your DNA make the right things to develop um, the material, so your body will recognize it and that it will help to kill it. So miscellaneous things. This is the website if you want to look at the vaccines, all the trials. It will tell you in what phases they're in. It will talk about which countries. It will tell you where they're at in the countries and the data that's happening over there in terms of side effects or efficacy or what's happening. So if you want to look at that, you can go into this website. There's some data now, because initially they were saying that you might only have immunity up to 3 months, but now the data is changing, saying that you could have immunity up to 6 or greater than 6 months now. And this is just for more natural immunity. But the thought with the vaccine is it could be much longer than that on the vaccine because it's a great efficacy. We're trying to stagger immunization of medical personnel, because you can imagine that if all the medical personnel got vaccinated all at the same time, and heaven forbid that something happens that everybody gets sick at the same time, they're medical, who is going to take care of the people who are ill? So it's good that not every medical personnel is being done all at the same time. So there'll be a wave of people and then the next wave of people, so it works out well. United Kingdom did see a mutation, because I know that people are worried. Well, should I get this vaccine? Because if there's a mutation, it's not going to be uh, effective. Everybody's monitoring for mutations, but again, you have to have a tremendous amount of mutations to happen to the virus in order to have the vaccine not work. And so, as it is now, they're seeing that it's not affecting the vaccine in efficacy. There are 3 at-home tests that have been approved since November 17th. There's one by Lucira, another one Ellume, and then one by Abbott. So this is a little strange because these are swabs that are done at home, and they could actually help to identify the infection, but they're only about 90% effective. So having these tests, there's still a 10% chance that you could be that you could be missed or that you're overcalled on. So um, I I would tell you that if you decide to do these home tests, don't fully rely on them. You probably still need the PCR to approve it. It can give a result within 15 to 20 minutes, but then there are some of them that might take 24 to 36 hours. And you all know that in ours, we're linked to a lab that has been so gracious to go and send people out to go and swab them. And it's the gold standard PCR, and we can have the results in 24 to 36 hours and sometimes less that time. Um, the two of them you need a prescription for in order to do it, and the other one you don't. So it's unclear whether insurance is going to cover these tests or not. And then our pharmacy downstairs in our building, MedIndex Pharmacy, applied for the ability to obtain the vaccine and administer the vaccine. And 3 out of 100 independent pharmacies in our area were approved for the vaccine. So this isn't including things like CVS and Walgreens, and because those are like the super pharmacies. But we're talking about these smaller pharmacies. Only 3 of them were approved, and this pharmacy in our building was approved. So he's waiting for his shipment of the vaccine. Again, I'm just going to caution this because have been some people who have anaphylactic reactions. It might be a good idea for those of you who have a strong allergy type history, that maybe it might be better for you to have your vaccine not really in a pharmacy, but in maybe a different area that's adept to taking care of a potential allergic reaction. But for those of you who don't have those issues, then you should be able to have that done at the pharmacies. The other part is that these pharmacies, particularly the big ones like Walgreens, CVS, uh, they have and Rite Aid, they have now contracts with some of the extended care facilities where they're going to be sending out their employees to go and vaccinate all the people in that facility who are interested in getting the vaccine. So that's nice. I think there's a rollout. I was talking to somebody earlier today that there might be a rollout that they'll have that started next week for those people at the extended care facilities or assisted living facilities. So I also wanted to mention this. There's been a number of people who have been sending me information about ivermectin, and ivermectin is a anti-parasite medication. Way back, I think in the spring, late spring or early summer, I had mentioned that ivermectin was is one of the medicines that's being looked at. Now, there is some data to show that ivermectin can be used for prophylaxis, which means before the infection that like medical personnel could take it and they could decrease their chance of getting infected. And then it also could be used for treatment, and that their claims are that there's less in side effects that are related to this. Now, you guys all know my feeling about hydroxychloroquine. I think it's good to think about that as a treatment, and I'm going to tell you that I believe ivermectin is the same way, but I'm not to the point that I really want people to take it because the side effect profile could potentially cause an issue. Um, so ivermectin is not something that's without side effects, and I would say that there are probably physicians who will argue the point and say that it really doesn't have much in side effects. But some people have lost their eyesight with it. Some people have bad skin rashes that can occur with it. Some people can have liver issues that can happen with it. So it's not the perfect drug, too, you know. Uh, and even when you look at remdesivir, there are people who don't react to it or don't get any improvement on it, and it also can cause the liver test to go up. So all these medicines are not perfect, and my hopes are is that many of us won't need these medications if we're doing the right thing. And the first thing is just try not to get infected if you can. And if you get infected, stay close to your physician so that you could be monitored on a regular basis to make sure that you could stay on a point that you could get your treatment and stay at home and not end up in the hospital or be on stronger medications that you potentially have side effects to. So I myself, I have hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin in the back of my mind, but I choose not to want to treat any people with it because we don't have enough data yet to make sure that it is going to be safe and it's going to be effective. I would say that it seems like maybe ivermectin might be a little bit more effective and maybe a little more safer than hydroxychloroquine. But the problem is ivermectin, the doses are all over the place. And the doses are just like for hydroxychloroquine, they are generally in super doses that we normally don't use on people. So the question is too, what's going to happen long term on people having these medicines in terms of potential damage? So I'm just going to say that I think we should reserve this on a case by case basis. I think that we should do everything we can to prevent ourselves from ever getting to that step if we can. But you can see here that there's some side effects that are related: loss of eyesight, problems with skin reactions, potential effect of the liver, and swelling that can occur. Uh, and then again, the dosing issues. So in looking at the numbers here, you can see all our numbers are going up still globally. We went from 69 million to 74 million. US cases went from 15 million to 17 million, so a 2 million increase in cases in just 1 week's time. In Michigan, we had about 30,000 increase in cases, and in Wayne County, there was a 5,000 increase in cases, and for all of us in Oakland and Macomb, we had about a 3,000 increase in each of our counties. The deaths in Wayne County went up about 100, a little over 100 over 1 week's time, and same with Macomb, and also with well, actually Macomb and Oakland County a little bit less, maybe about 80 cases. And then when you look at our rankings, we're still the highest number of cases. Michigan is still I didn't outline this, but Michigan is in the 10th place for the 18th. So you can see here, I'm sorry, this says December 11th, but the column here on to the right of it should be December 18th. And the United States still in the first position with the highest number of cases. Michigan has stayed around the same, around 10th place. And then Wayne County actually is about the same at 22nd. But there was some decrease in the numbers, even though our standing is still the same. You look at the hospital data, you can see the numbers overall are dropping. We had at Beaumont 600 on the 4th to shy of 600 on the 11th, and now we're under 500 as of today. And you could also see the number of ICU cases are down in pretty much all the hospitals. So, and going over quarantine and also for isolation, just remember when you're exposed to someone, you're supposed to be in quarantine, which means away from others so that you don't potentially infect other people for 10 days. It used to be 14 days, but it's moved down to 10 days. Now, if you get a COVID test 5 days in and it's negative, and you don't have symptoms, then you actually can break quarantine and you only need to be in quarantine for 7 days. But again, it's important. Even if you end up getting exposed, please do the right thing and don't be in the community for the chance that you could potentially infect others. Because now that person's going to infect another person, and that other person's going to infect others, and this just is going to prolong our closure. I mean, if we're all doing the right thing, and I'm hopefully being mindful and being respectful to other people, so that we're not exposing other people unnecessarily, we're going to open faster. But it's those people who decide that they don't want to quarantine and they've been exposed, and worse yet, for those individuals who've been infected and that they decide not to put themselves in isolation, That's not good. That really exposes exposure to other people to get infected. They're going to pass it on to someone and potentially get to somebody who cannot protect themselves, and they are going to have a bad complication, or worse yet, they'll die from that. So please follow the guidelines, and we can get we can get our community open. And those people who are isolated, meaning they're infected, they need to be 10 days from the start of symptoms or from the positive test. And they can end their isolation in general 10 days after they've been infected or had symptoms, as long as they had no fever in the past 24 hours on that last day. Now, there's some caveats to it, like people who have been hospitalized, they're going to be on isolation longer than 10 days, but we'll define that at that time. But in general, people only need to be in isolation for 10 days, and there is no need to retest to be around people again, unless someone's employer really requires that. So I'm going to talk a few more things. The live care. I met with the people, and this is an amazing device. If you see there, the device is just a little bit smaller than my cell phone. So it's probably 2/3 actually the size of my cell phone. And in that, it has the ability that if someone is in a panic and something's wrong, they actually can press one of these buttons, and it can link to whoever it's designated to. So if I have a staff member it's a designated to, or is it designated to me, we actually can go on audio or video and talk about what's going on if it's an emergency. The nice thing about this device is it connects to multiple um, devices, and it automatically does that based on the device you have. That there's a list of them. So on their website, they have a list of all the different glucometers, pulse oximeters, thermometers, also even to a stethoscope. And that stethoscope, you literally could put that on your chest, and I can hear your lungs or your heart. If there's an issue, you're ill, and we need to figure out whether you have pneumonia, congestive heart failure, or something else that's going on, that we could end up learning that just putting that stethoscope on you. And then there's also a link to Cardia, so people can put something that's a little bit about the size of a credit card where they put their thumbs on it, and it can take an EKG of them, and it can be sent to me or the cardiologist, or to your doctor. And that way, if there's a problem and you feel your heart thumping away, we could potentially pick up on that, and we can make a decision that you either have to go to the hospital, or you need to be in my office or the cardiologist's office right away. So these are just fantastic monitoring devices. The initial kit's about $100, and then the monitoring on a monthly basis is $19 a month. Generally, from I understand, that the insurance will be covering this because it tremendously improves helping to monitor you, so that your blood pressure is under better control, your glucose values are in better control, your heart rate's in better control, it can monitor your weight. And the nice thing is that data now gets pulled into one system. I mean, literally, you would just turn the device on, put whatever device you're going to use, checking your oxygen or checking your blood pressure or checking your glucose. You would just check it, and as soon as you check it, it gets pulled automatically into this device. You don't need to do anything, and then it gets loaded into a file that you can see and I can see, and we could trend it. We can say we want to see your data from X to X date, and then we can figure out how well you're controlled or not controlled. And there's also a feature there that we could set boundaries, so that if your pressures or heart rate or your glucose values, or your oxygen status is going above or below a certain point that's or dangerous, then it can alert me or somebody, so that we can get it fixed right away. So just amazing technology for really I think a nominal price. I think $19 a month is more than fair for being able to have a platform like this that captures everything. Because with other places, you like if you had a Fitbit, you'd have data in there. If you had an Apple Watch, you'd have data there. If you had some other thing like something like this, but it only picks up just a few things, you'd have your data there. So now you have your data scattered all over the place. And for something that's really easy to use that you don't need to do anything to pair or link it. It just does it automatically on compatible devices that they tell you, is just really amazing. Um, we're in the pilot for that, so we're actually they're testing on me, and we're going to be testing on other people. And if everything works out well, we're going to be really trying to get everybody to be on this platform because it's going to really help to enhance um, caring for diseases that are data driven like this. Just a reminder in testing, if you get exposed to someone with COVID, please contact our office, and then we can send out the company based on your exposure time, and time it out so it would improve the chance that the test would be more accurate on you, and then we can get the results within 24 to 36 hours. And this is to try to save you from scrambling, going to an urgent care emergency room. And it's just been such a kind thing that this laboratory is doing this for us. I know they closed to other practices because they were so busy. So just let us know what we can do to help. In this Michigan COVID Alert app, so this is an app that you could download on your phone. You can go to the App Store for if you have an Android or a regular phone versus an Apple phone. And this COVID Alert is to try to determine if you have had any potential contact with somebody who had COVID within 10 days. So it was, this is on a voluntarily basis. So the person, their data is private; it's not shared with anybody. The hopes are is that they will be upfront that if they test positive, they will say in the app that they were positive, so that if they were walking by somebody who had that app, that it would alert that person that someone came by that was COVID positive within the past 10 days. So again, this is limited because it's the individual's decision whether they're going to share their positive or not. So if they don't put in there they're positive, but they came by you, it's not going to pick them up, and it's not meaning, and it's not going to alert you. So my hopes are whoever's on this that they're going to. I know mine has not shown any exposure with anyone who's COVID positive within the past 10 days, but that might also mean that someone's not registered in the app, or someone is positive and didn't report it. So you've seen this. This is the pause to save lives. These are things that are open, not open, and we're going to follow the guidelines that the governor has set. The face masks, and then the things that we talked about before of what we can do to reach out. Again, I want to make sure that everybody's understanding that we're not losing sight of what happened, that this thing has destroyed a lot of lives and businesses, and what can we do to help each other. But in order to help each other, people have to reach out and say, I need help. And then the people who want to help have to, and hopefully, say, I want to help. And so these are resources that can happen. You can, that we could try to get people linked to these that maybe can help them find a job, or get their medicines for less, or get them for free, or places that can give them furniture, whatever things that can be done to help. And then for people who have extra things that they would like to donate, and that we can get that into the right person so that we can get them help. So the final thing is really, what can we still do for now? Just be patient. The vaccines are here and they're being administered. Just prevent infection exposure. Try to stay informed with a person who you trust for information. Take your vitamin D, C, and your zinc on a regular basis. Keep your nutrition up. Modify your stress. Minimize your exposure to others who are ill. Stay active. Follow the CDC guidelines for sanitizing and social distancing and wearing a mask, and just being very careful. I know we're in the holidays and it's hard not to see people, but we're just about there. There's some projection that says that if we get enough people vaccinated, that we could get to a point that maybe in the summer we might be so much more liberal with our life that we might not be needing a mask or social distancing or any of these things. So my hopes are that if everybody does the right thing, whether you get the vaccine or you don't get the vaccine, please, if you get exposed to someone, go in quarantine. if you have the infection, please put yourself in isolation, because I myself would love to be able to see everybody and hug everybody and share that time in that way and not be like this anymore. And the only way to do that is we all have to work together and do the right thing. So if there's any questions, I'm sorry we started late. There's so much ground to cover, and I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that the vaccines are here and we're getting started. And as I learn more about the vaccines, I'll be able to get.
I'll hug
Oh
him.
my God, it's crazy. Uh, Actually, I think all of you have been kind of. It's been kind of funny because she scribes with me, and so sometimes people will see me in a scarf in my office as I'm doing my telehealth, and they say, "Oh, why are you wearing a scarf?" I said, "Well, it's been kind of a little bit cold in here because I'm just referring to Jen's here, but it's a joke. It's a wonderful." So, okay. So, does anyone have any questions?
I have a question. This is Debbie Johnson from Oscoda, John.
Yeah. Hi.
And excuse my pronunciation of these words, but I'm just kind of curious of like what's in your head with your protocol. Jeff and I are at that age. I would consider us maybe medium risk, but Jeff high risk because of his heart condition. And you talked about hydrochloroquine and what's the other one? Ibuprofen or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Yes.
yeah, and I've heard of remdesivir
Yeah.
and Generon.
Yeah.
I hope
Regeneron.
I hope I didn't cut those words up. Now, like someone in our category, what would be your protocol? And I don't think the worst. I'm not a negative thinker, but I'm thinking, well, we're in Oscoda, and what if one of us was exposed in our age group with whatever risk factors we have? Would that be your protocol to put us on one of the four, or how would that work?
Well, in general, most people are going to end up going into the hospital. They'll end up getting IV fluids or whatever things to support for now. Depending on the severity, they'll get steroids. They'll likely get hit with the remdesivir first, and then if they need the monoclonal antibodies, they'll do that, or the plasma that will be given. And the reality is that a lot of that's really dictated based on the place that you're at and the resources that you have. I would suspect that out up north there that it would be difficult to get some of those things, but as long as you're an advocate for yourself and your family, then you would be requesting for those things to be delivered to your hospital system so that you can get that. Like here's an example: someone contacted me, and that whether they're going to get certain medications. I said, well, there's some of them for emergency use. The infectious disease doctor or the other specialists that are there at the hospital have to go reach out to that pharmaceutical company so that they can request for emergency compassionate use because the person's not um, doing well and the medicine hasn't been fully approved, or maybe it's in scarce supply that it needs to be delivered to that facility. So it would be, again, case by case basis, and just being an advocate. If there's an issue and not sure, then always reach out to your doctor. I'm your doctor, so you would reach out to me, and I would tell you what needs to be done.
Well, the first thing we would do is jump in our car and come down there. That's a given. There's nothing up here or a lot of outlets for us up here, but I thank you for the great education because I'm learning things that I didn't really actually know anything about. So thank you so much.
No, I'm happy to provide this for everybody because I mean, to me, it's fun to do. I mean, unfortunately, it's not a terrible disease, but at the same time, it makes me feel comforted in the fact that all of you are understanding things to getting more to the level that I understand as best as I can explain it, and that information will help you make the right decisions for you and your family. Um, thank you for that. Any other questions?
Yeah, hi, Dr. Calado. You probably didn't see the governor today because you were probably getting ready for this, but she's opened up things again starting Monday, the
Yeah,
21st.
I suspected that was going to happen because our numbers were going down because everybody was doing the right
Right.
thing. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah. And then just a question. So two questions. Why are so many drug companies making so many different versions of this virus? Like if somebody comes up with a great one, why doesn't everybody just copycat that? Or is it like getting Tylenol, Advil, and Aleve and those kinds of comparisons? Because you think if they came up with a great one, why are we waiting for so many more? Is it just because of the volume?
Well, I think it just goes back to still competition. I mean, as much as everybody was working together with the same data, there were some companies, some countries who decided not to be with the consortium with Bill Gates, and so they didn't get all the information that all these other places did, or so that they were able to share this and develop. But at the same time, there's people who felt they had a better way to make their mousetrap, and so you know, and that's their mind took them in that direction. Now it could be that these other ones that are still in the pipeline could be even better than what's going to be coming out now. We don't know. We can only comment on the ones that are the front runners that are coming out now because I mean we can we can think about all the other ones, but the reality is they're not here. And what are we looking for? We're looking for something right here. So in these cases, they felt they built the better mousetrap.
Okay, let's see.
But you also have to remember these ones that are out here, there were no guarantees that they were going to end up working, right? So everybody kind of went in their own direction and said that, okay, we think this is going to be better. They were just these three were able to get their stuff together quickly and get the data and now get the evaluations that are done so that we could make the right decision that it was safe to come out.
I see. My other comment was it's a shame that for some reason it's been allowed through Google and Messenger and other apps that just kind of pop on my phone about, you're probably aware of all these doctors in other countries warning you not to take the vaccine. It's going to change your DNA. You won't be able to become pregnant. You're going to be able to be tracked by the government through your phone if you get the vaccine. And believe me, I have very intelligent friends way over 65 who think that this could possibly be true. Uh,
There's a lot of these conspiracy theories. I would say that there I've heard that there was this video and there was a number of physicians and other people that were on there and but
right.
they were so many of them they were saying this is not a pandemic and it's a hoax and if you really think this is a pandemic and a hoax then there's a problem because it fits every definition of a pandemic and try telling somebody that's a hoax who's lost a family member to COVID. You
Right.
know, something simple as much as this individual that I'm telling you that I went to the funeral today, I mean this week, and he was just going for a cardiac procedure and ended up having infection of COVID inadvertently. And so everything is okay apparently with his heart. He's just fighting the infection and that infection overwhelmed him and then the bad outcome ended up happening. So I mean that's hard to tell that person, that family that it's a hoax and tell that to also to over 300,000 people who lost their lives that that it's a hoax. And I mean there was someone I know that lost I think it was like 5 family members in 3 different states. I mean,
Right.
you can understand if that happened all in one state, but it happened in 3 different states and in one
Yeah.
family. So I can't tell them that's going to be a hoax. And then I would say, if they want to put a chip in it, I don't have any problem someone following me because I know that I'm not doing anything wrong. So if I'm not doing anything wrong, what would I be worried about? I joke
That's
about that, but the thing is that really, I mean,
right.
is it
You
really,
don't have to-
unless you're really doing something that's illegal, I mean, should you really be worried about that? I mean, maybe I'm just completely naive about the whole thing, but I just look at it and I tell my kids that all the time. If you're not doing anything wrong, then you shouldn't have to do anything where you're looking around over your shoulder for people doing stuff because you're not doing anything wrong. The only time you
Hmm.
need to be watching over your shoulder is if you're in a bad area and you're worried about getting mugged or getting hurt or robbed or something like that. But otherwise, if you're doing everything right, you shouldn't have to worry.
Right. So I think for people in that mindset, they're looking for a reason to support what they don't believe. And they're picking one small issue of a video like that against everything that you see 24/7 in all types of news medias that tells you otherwise. So one other question I was going to ask, like you're saying this woman had heart trouble and then got COVID in the hospital. So are the doctors still doing elective surgeries right now, or are they just waiting till after? I was thinking about my cataract surgery.
Well, I've been kind of changing the way I've been, even though we're doing things in the hospital. I mean, if you're concerned about infection, then it probably is a good idea to hold off until a number of people get inoculated, and that way it's going to decrease the numbers of people that could be around.
Okay.
I believe this person was part of another system, not part of Beaumont. So I,
Right.
I know what we do at Beaumont, and there's a lot of safety measures that are put into place. So I'm less worried about things like that. And I, people can call me biased because I've been part of Beaumont for over 20 years, but I've seen over the years the things they've done to help people, help the employees, and really try to keep things safe. So, and I have been part of other hospital systems that I didn't see the same thing. So, I can only tell you what I see there at Beaumont, and they're safe.
Right. So basically, the ruling for still with the holidays is still to stay within your own household in your own bubble and keep that safety going as much as you can. I mean, I haven't had anybody in my household, but
I'm going to go back to what I've said before.
I know,
It's
but
found like-minded people who are
right,
very strong about trying not to get infected and are worried and mindful of the people that are around them and want nothing more to, but just to keep everybody safe. Then you're probably going to be safe with them. And this is the same thing I've been saying over the past, really since the start of all of it. The problem is that when you're getting into a group of people that you don't know them, that's the problem, because you don't
mhm,
know if they're the cavalier attitude that oh, I don't care, I'll get infected and I'm not worried about it. They might not be worried about themselves, but they should be worried about it for somebody else.
right,
And that's a problem. And then unfortunately, not everybody does the right thing, you know, and the only thing that we can do is just do what we do, and hopefully what we do is right. And if it's not all the time right, in most times it is right.
yeah,
If your family is like that and you guys want to be together, and that it's always been that way, that they've taken every precaution, and then you could do social distancing at home and you could keep it limited and just make sure everything's okay, then I think that you could.
well, I think early on that people were more quarantined, but I mean, now my adult grandchildren who work as a dental hygienist and nursing program as a chef, they're forced to go to their job. So even how careful they want to be, they've had not necessarily one-on-one exposure, but somebody in their company has. They've closed down, they've shut down, they've stayed home. My daughter works in an office. She's been shut down probably 3 times in the last 2 months. She's always negative, but so they feel themselves that they're not really safe because they don't know how they're getting exposed when they're being careful, but it's kind of more in work situations than anything else. My grandson on his hockey team, they only played 4 on the hockey team and they only had 2 in the locker and still somebody tested positive. So
Again, those are different situations. I mean, those
right,
are your hope is that those family members who would get exposed would be very, very um, watchful and
they
really
are.
vigilant about their exposure. That they would say that if there was any iffy time that came into play that they were exposed to somebody, that they would just say, I'm sorry, I'm going to bow out on this because I'm not sure what's going on, and I love you too much and I care for you too much to expose you, you know,
Right.
and I think we should just take that, and
Yeah.
hopefully there are other family members that are like, oh, you don't need to worry about it, just come over and stuff. Hopefully those people will just say, no, it's okay. Let's not
Yeah.
judge people because they're not going to attend something or not, or they're going to attend something, or they're going to take the vaccine or not take the vaccine. I mean, we
Yeah.
all have our own minds, and we have to make up what we're going to do based on the best information that we have.
Right. Well, I think we'll be having a very good Zoom Christmas with games. We'll be eating our dinner at the same time and opening gifts in front of the Zoom. And I guess, like I tell them, it's only 2 days. We get by 2 days of celebrations, and then possibly things get better after the new year and the vaccines, etc. So we won't be getting the vaccine anytime soon, though, anybody in the general public or even compromised people.
But here's an idea, and it just kind of struck me because I've done this in previous um, gatherings before. Minute to win it is really fun. And I mean, just to give you an example of one, there's one, it's kind of wasteful, but I mean, you can still use it afterwards. But one is taking 2 tissue boxes and that you're trying to empty the tissues one at a time, and whoever does it first
Oh,
uh, and wins, and so that can be done on Zoom. It's a
oh,
whole, you can set up where you can have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 families and then have competitions between all of them. I mean, I think all of us have to start thinking out of the box, right? I mean,
right.
we can't meet each other, but we can do these things. I mean, should we just sit there and just stare at each other on the video monitor when we can
Yeah.
think of something unique to do? And there are different games on Minute to Win It that can be done, and you can make a competition and say that, okay, well, the next time we meet, whoever's the winner is going to get this. Might be gift cards or I don't know, whatever you decide to
Right.
do.
Right.
Maybe it's a plaque for the family who's considered the best at Minute to Win It, and then you can
Right.
make a trophy or something. I
Right.
I don't know. Just again trying to figure out, thinking out of the
Yeah.
box things.
Yeah. I've seen that they do have bingo on Zoom, and they have Yahtzee and a bunco game, which multiple families can play at the same time.
Mm.
So definitely making the best. Well, I wish you and all your staff a very blessed, happy, healthy Christmas, and to all your listeners who are starting to sort of know each other by name and by voice, and
It's
let
wonderful.
everybody be thankful that you've done this for us, Dr. Calado. I hope you continue this even when the pandemic is over. Maybe you can just verse us every month on something we don't know.
No, well, the whole plan was even before starting COVID was to do this for cardiovascular disease, doing this for
Right.
MC, COPD, doing it for urinary tract infections, and just kind of various things. But it just happened that the specific need was to really try to address COVID and how do we do to protect each other.
Right.
A lot of it stemmed from I was getting so many phone calls that it just created a nice way to be able to disseminate the information to everybody at the same time, so everyone had similar information.
I don't know if you or any of your other patients, but I have heard from remember the lady that was going to have the Mediterranean um, style eating, and we signed up for it, and then COVID came and she didn't. But I got a phone call from her that she is definitely going to have it, and if I knew anybody who had signed up for that program, that they could contact your office and find out. I think it's going to be mid-January.
Excellent.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, our space is hopefully going to get to the point where it originally was intended to have Tai Chi and nutrition and Pilates and yoga,
Mm-hmm.
educational series. But
That'd be great.
thank you so much.
All right. Welcome.
Any other questions? I'm surprised no one asked me about immunization if they've already had COVID infection. So actually, the CDC hasn't made a recommendation yet because we're not sure about immunity. Uh, I guess common sense just tells me that if we are in a shortage of the vaccine, then maybe those people who have been infected could end up holding off from getting the vaccine. Somewhere along the line, they need the vaccine because the natural immunity is going to wane or somewhat disappear, and that the vaccine will help to give them a booster or actually provide better coverage for immunity. But as it is now, there's not really a formal recommendation of that. We do know that they are going to need vaccination, but I guess the question is, do they really need the vaccination now, or could they hold off until the next wave of people to give the people who want the vaccine a chance to get the ones that are available now?
Yes. What about the issue that was that the plasma was supposed to be so beneficial, and that has even been on currently on different talk shows and things. And how do they even get people to give plasma? Do they have to ask them, or is it a voluntary thing? Or
So we are giving plasma in the hospital, and to those individuals that are really ill. I'm telling the people who are COVID positive that they could actually go to the blood bank and they could actually donate their blood and let them know they're COVID positive, so that if they have to do whatever extra things to their blood so that they can extract out the materials that could be used to help and save other people. You know, I think it's a very comforting thing to know that you can save somebody else. So if you are COVID positive and you want to donate your blood in hopes to help other people so that they can develop the material that could be infused to people when they're hospitalized, I strongly encourage you to do that.
well, how about somebody who had it my brother and his wife had it in February and in April? Is that too long gone now?
Well, it depends again how long the immunity is. I mean, initially it was thought about 3 months, but now we're seeing some people out more than 6 months. So I
Mhm.
think it would be them to go to the blood bank. They would analyze the blood, get
Okay.
donating their blood anyway, and they would take the blood and try to determine if they have any of the components that are needed to make any anti-infective things that they need.
Oh, I see. Okay. That's good to
So
know. So,
they're trying to
yeah.
extract cells that are in there that are thought to fight off the COVID, and
Hmm.
then try to harness all that, and then that could be infused in somebody else who does not have those cells to fight the COVID.
Okay. So they don't have much of a supply of that now in the hospitals because people aren't doing it?
Well, the problem was is that at the start, no one really knew, and then as we started to know, there were probably not enough people who really knew that they had the infection come and gone because we didn't really have a good way to test it. Now that we have testing that we can pick up those people who have the antibodies, those things, the people that can actually start to donate blood. But at the same time, there's restrictions because of hours and distancing and setting up appointments, and so those things tend to be a little bit more of a hurdle, and that some people may not have the patience to go through that and say, okay, oh, that's too much work for me just to go donate blood, and so they decide not to do it.
Okay.
So
I see.
my
I
hopes
see.
are whoever's listening to this will have the patience and do that, that those things can be developed for other people.
Hmm. Well, my daughter got tested on Monday for the fourth time through her HR through work. She still has not gotten her test results back yet. And it's Friday, so she's missed a whole week of work and she's not getting paid for it as well. And they told her, don't hold your breath because they have 3 times more testing than they can possibly handle. So that's
So
discouraging.
that's why I'm really thankful and grateful to this lab who could come in and swab people and then have the results, in 24 to 36 hours. I mean, some
Mhm.
of them we've had that later on in the day. It was just amazing.
Right, right. Okay, well, that's good information about the plasma. I thank you for that.
Other questions, concerns?
This is Chris. I just have a comment about the tracking um, that was mentioned. The tracking idea doesn't appeal to me at all. I'm kind of a private person. But on the other hand, if we look back and see that it was the Asian countries, Korea, Taiwan, et cetera, that have done really, really well, even Singapore, in this whole thing, they all had the tracking. And it
Yeah.
enabled people to, be contacted very, very quickly. So we need to, kind of think about that a little bit, I think, because it could be a really good tool.
Well,
That would,
it's scarier in those countries because you are either labeled as green, yellow, or red. Red, you were infected. Yellow, your status was unknown, and green, you were completely clear. And so, for them, they're so tied into their phones that those were essentially passes to get anywhere. You would have to show your status on your phone as to what you are before you can get entrance into anything. We don't have that here. I mean, you can walk into a store and you're not labeled as green, yellow, or red. But for them in the store, if you're yellow or red, you could be denied going into that store. And so, I mean, you're right. I mean, do we need to be that strict? I think the government had the hopes is that people would make the right decision and not have to get to a point that a mandate like that would have to happen. But if we have too many people who just really want to do things on their own and not really care about other people, and want to say this is my right, but there's other people who have that right to live too and not get infected. So I mean, it would be different as your right as saying that I can go into the establishment and I can go shop. But this goes beyond just being able to shop in a place. This is about a person's health. I want to go shop, but I don't want to go shop and get infected. So, I mean, to me, it's not one and the same. It's something that if someone wants to keep saying, well, I have a right to go into the store and go shop, and I don't care to wear a mask, and I don't care if I'm infected and I'm coming in, well, that's like taking somebody who has a potentially a known infection of something that's potentially harmful and just letting them come into a group of people who are healthy and then they get infected and then something bad happens to them. Where does the liability come from that? I mean, does the person who infected the other person now have, you know, could be manslaughter, could be that now the establishment's in trouble because they allowed somebody who was infected come in and then got someone else infected and got hurt. You know, I don't want it ever to get to that. I guess I'm just again hoping that people are just doing the right thing. Be respectful to other people. No one wearing a mask is not trying to be disrespectful to anybody. It's just that when you look into the Asian countries and they've had bird flu and they've had the original SARS and they've had all this other stuff, and it didn't get to the point that it spread all over the place. They were able to contain it because they're so used to wearing masks and whatever they're doing about the lockdowns and stuff like that. They're just so used to it. We're just not used to it because we have a different set of mentality to doing it, but I think we need to change. Sorry, I was on my soapbox.
Hello, Dr. Calado. This is Jack and Sharon. We just
Hi.
wanted to convey our appreciation for all your expertise, and we're also thankful for all your time and energy that you give to our patients. And we wanted to let you know that we're doing fine and that your recommendation for Repatha hasn't affected us. Well, no side effects, no bad side. And we just want to wish you and your family and staff to a wonderful holiday and a healthy 2021.
Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Calado.
Thank you. Yep.
You're an awesome guy.
I wanted to find a slide because I wanted to put something up there that says, for me, if someone came up to me and said Happy Kwanzaa or Happy Hanukkah, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I think it's just a celebration of life and our beliefs. So whether someone says Merry Christmas or Happy Hanukkah or Happy Kwanzaa or whatever, I don't know, Diwali, I'm not sure of all of them, and I'm hoping I'm not being disrespectful to anybody. But when I say that, I hope when I'm saying Merry Christmas, I'm just saying, happy holidays to everybody for whatever they believe in. And same thing, if they say that to me, I just understand that they're celebrating what they believe in and nothing personal. It's just that, we got into this point. It's like, okay, you're this ethnicity, you're this religion, you're this, this gender identity or whatever. I mean, I'm tired of that. I just want us all to look at each other that we're just human.
Right. Blessings to all.
That's good.
Other questions, concerns? Well, thank you all. So I'm going to say that we'll send a blast out next week. If something happens and changes in terms of the information with the vaccine, like it's available immediately over here, then I will either send a phone blast out, or we're going to send an email out, or we're going to send an alert that says that we're going to meet again in like last minute, so that everybody has that information, so that we can get the people who need to be vaccinated done quickly, who want to. Okay? No.
Righty. See you soon.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. All right. Have a great
Adios.
weekend. Have a great set
Thank
of
you.
holidays. Merry Christmas and every other holiday that everyone celebrates during this time. Okay?
Happy holidays to everyone. Buenos
All right.
Noel.
Take care, everyone. Bye bye.
Merry
Bye.
Christmas, Doc. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas, all.